Good afternoon. How you guys doing out there? Gabe DeArmond here on one side of your screen, Jarod Hamilton on the other side. It has been, I don't know, it's been a minute. We'll just put it that way. But look, it's the off season. Missouri hasn't played a football game in, I don't know, 6 months and some change. There was no spring football game, all that. Jarod, I just want to tell you, man, I've done this for a little while. Don't get used to this. Not every offseason is this quiet, man. It would be great if it was for us, but not everyone's this quiet.
Oh, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it for the first year.
Absolutely. I know, like sports fans, the offseason, everybody does these countdowns, right? Like 150 days till the season, whatever. I learned a long time ago, man, don't wish your life away. It'll be here soon enough. And it is, I think we're 27 days from now. Jarod will be in Nashville talking to Eli Drinkwitz, SEC Media Days. So like it's getting here. It's pretty close. And that's why we kind of wanted to come back and just kind of do an off-season reset. Some things have happened here lately. Talk about really anything you guys want to talk about. If you are here live watching with us, feel free to put your comments up and we'll get to the comments, the questions. Jason among those with us. We'll put the comments up on the screen. If you're listening on the podcast later on, then you're just going to have to deal with what we feel like talking about. So let's just start kind of big picture. We are a month away from, I feel like we say this every year, but man, this seems like a big season for Missouri football to me. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs out there, and some of those need to get some answers here in the next 6 months.
I remember, so coming up on my little 1-year anniversary here, I remember maybe more so in fall camp, you was telling me, the same thing. It's like, it's a big year, but I'm sure you said that in after 2020. So you said that last year, saying it this year. It's a big year every year, but when it's 6-6 over and over and over again, and you don't know what's going on for some positions, and you don't have certainty for some things, it's getting a little hectic.
Yeah, I mean, we do say it most years, and it's true most years, but this one just seems like, look, we've been sitting here. I mean, it's 2 games under 500 for Drinkwitz. If you go back to 2015, Missouri's a few games under 500. Like, that's just, you want movement one way or the other. And so let's just start here. Let's address the elephant in the room, because this is what every single football thread on our message board turns into this, usually pretty quickly, is how many games does he have to win to be the coach next year? And I've been saying all along, like, I think 6 is a maybe. He comes back. 7, he definitely comes back, but it won't generate a lot of excitement. But I've kind of also started to think, I don't know, man. I like with the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma are joining the SEC. Divisions are going away. This thing's going to get crazy. Like, I've really started thinking in the last couple of weeks, Missouri needs Eli Drinkwitz to be the guy, because, okay, if he goes 6-6 or 5-7 and you fire him, are you just going to – who are you going to get that you feel like is going to do better? And the point is, it's a dart throw if it doesn't work with Drinkwitz. And I know I've said all along, hey, 5-7, you got to fire him. I don't know, man. I'm starting to think I don't know if that's the right way to go, because long term, this SEC is scary. The way, I mean, they released that schedule a couple weeks ago, and you're just looking around going, man, who's got the easy schedule here?
I just feel like there's multiple factors besides finishing 7-5, 8-4, 5-7, 6-6. There's other stuff that goes into that, kind of like this past season where it was 6-6, but if you watched all 12 games, there's context to those games, and easily could have been 8-4 without some things. You and I were just talking off screen about recruiting. That's going to be something, just in-state guys and keep going, and that individually won't matter, I feel like, to get them fired or whatever, but that, and maybe not getting above that 6-6 threshold, probably that and maybe mix of other things that maybe we just don't know about can lead to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's no hard and fast number. I've said all along, like, I think the worst case scenario is 6-6 or 7-5. 6-6 is the worst case scenario. Because like
That's the bottom.
Yeah, you go to a bowl game and there's an argument to be made that's good enough to keep him, but 6-6 doesn't get anybody excited. I'm not sure 7-5 builds a lot of momentum, but at least it's a winning record and all that. At 5-7, hey, at least you'd have an answer. Like, I'm not saying anybody should be rooting for 5-7. You should be rooting for 10-2 or 12-0 or whatever it is. I mean, best case scenario is, hey, they go out here and win 8 or 9 games and this thing starts to take off. But like, I can make an argument that 5-7 and just deciding to move on is almost better than 6-6, and just we go into next year going, boy, I don't really know, but this sure seems like a big year for Missouri football.
It feels even double when you compound the no schedule. I mean, the no divisions, and right. 2024 Texas and OU coming in. Like, I feel like a lot of teams in the SEC are going to be thinking about a similar thing with their coach. Like, are they ready for this next wave of SEC football? Not just the year-to-year thing, but what's going to go on in 2024, and then eventually with the 9-game schedule coming out. In 2025, supposedly, you know how.
Right. How maybe. Goes. Yeah. I feel like the SEC just every year is going to be like, well, we couldn't agree on anything, but here's what we're doing next year. And then just push it back a year. But
although I like the alternative for this year. I like what they've done for the 8 games. I mean, for 2024, I meant.
So that's a good place to start. I mean, the 8-game schedule looked to me like, because the leak came with the 9 games and like, hey, here's who we're hearing it would be and all that. And supposedly Nick Saban wasn't very happy about that. I mean, he talked to Ross Dellinger about that a few months ago. Alabama's teams were too hard. Well, if you look at that schedule, everybody got the 3 teams they were going to get. That almost seemed to me like Greg Sankey went in a room and said, all right, y'all being babies and you can't agree on anything, so we're going to play 8 games, but you're still going to play everybody you would have played in the 9-game schedule. But like bigger picture, and we had a bunch of topics that we kind of agreed, hey, here, we'll talk about some of these things. So this is a good one to start. The SEC schedule, combined with what you were just saying, I look forward, and Missouri is not alone here. I think there's a lot of teams in this league who are going to have to kind of redefine what success looks like. I wrote on Monday morning, if you are not LSU, Alabama, Georgia, and I throw Oklahoma in here because Oklahoma has been successful. They've been one of the top programs in college football, seriously, guys, for like 70 years now, going back to Bud Wilkinson. So I know a lot of people think Oklahoma's going to have a rude awakening in the SEC. And look, they might. Maybe Brent Venables don't have any idea what he's doing. But for now, I put Oklahoma into this conversation. If you're not one of those 4 teams, I don't think you can really expect SEC championship game appearances other than maybe once every few years. Because being a top 2 team in this 16-team league, like, it's not like you're sitting over here in one division and you just got to be better than 6 other teams. You got to be better than 14 teams in this league. So anything to disagree with there? I mean, if you're not, would you put anybody else in that group that you look at and say, okay, they can start most seasons thinking they might play in the SEC title game?
You said Georgia, Alabama,
LSU, Oklahoma.
Okay. I'm glad we went over that, because I was thinking Tennessee, and I was about to say there's some teams like a Tennessee where it's recency bias. So yeah, maybe. But if we take the last year or 2 or whatever, and then you go back to the 10 years they based the schedule off of, they're not in there. So you didn't have them. That's correct. Something else in the 10 thoughts was teams should be looking at getting it to the playoff more than getting to the conference.
It's easier. Like, it's going to be easier.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think the way we look at it, 10-2, 11-1, currently, I think you're going to do that like a step down. So like one less win is going to make you feel like, it's not undefeated, but that's a really good team that can do some damage in a bowl game or in the playoffs or whatever it may be. So everybody's expectations, especially for the teams in the middle rung of the conference, 8-4, that needs to kind of be like the new 7-5. And if you're maybe a new coach or something, like the 6-6, like that needs to be where you're like, this is where our bottom should be.
And I think, I mean, we're going to start to look at this a little more like NFL fans look at it, I think. Okay, you get 12 teams in the playoff. Yeah, it'd be cool to win the SEC or to play in the SEC title game. But honestly, there's going to be a team, I think, from the SEC and the Big Ten almost every year that isn't in the conference title game, that is in the 12-team playoff. So, hey, does anybody really – I mean, yeah, it's cool to win the AFC West, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. As a wild card team, you can still make the Super Bowl. So I think that's really – I think that's going forward what we're going to start to look at. And like you said, I mean, 9-3, some years it might not get you in, but 9-3 is going to give you a shot in the SEC to be in that top 12 every single year. And I think, like, Missouri fans are going to get mad at me for this, but I would say the same thing if this was a South Carolina podcast, an Ole Miss podcast, maybe even an Auburn or a Tennessee podcast. Like, guys, the 11-1 and winning this league or playing in the SEC title game, that's just not realistic very often. I'm not saying it can never happen, but it ain't going to happen much.
That 9-3, and also, like you said, you may make 9-3, and that may not get you into the playoffs some years. But you know what 9-3 does, though? It brings a lot more recruits than 6-6, 7-5, and 5-7 seasons. Like, that's still good enough to improve something and have momentum going into the next year, where that can roll over and maybe you get into the playoff now that next year. Of course, if stuff goes in the way it needs to, but that helps as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to – people will get tired of, like, being the New York Jets, obviously. You don't want that. You gotta be a wild card team every now and again. You've got to at least be in that conversation. Like Eddie Rose was talking about 2007, hey, that somebody got to do a documentary on the 2007 college football season. I know you were probably what, like 9?
8. Yeah,
8.
About 8 years old. But I do remember West Virginia and the Pat White team. I do remember Chase Daniel. I don't remember so much about that situation. I do remember them being good, but I didn't know they were 1 and 2. But I've heard about stuff about this lately, about how West Virginia lost to Pittsburgh, and then it was a bad Pittsburgh team, wasn't it?
So it was the weekend of Thanksgiving. West Virginia was I think Kansas was number 1, West Virginia was 2. LSU, I think, was 3, and Missouri was 4. So Pitt beats West Virginia. Bad Arkansas team beats LSU. Missouri beats Kansas. Missouri goes to number 1 in the country going into the Big 12 title game against Oklahoma. Then they lost, and Ohio State and LSU ended up playing in the national title game. But, like, this 12-team playoff opens up things like that, right? Like, yeah, you go in as the 12 seed. Hey, now we've got a little 3-week 2007 college football season on our hands. Go take your shot, right?
Right, and I think that LSU team that won that title was 10-2 or so.
Yeah,
it wasn't
it's
like
the only team to ever win a national title with 2 losses.
Right. So
yeah,
a lot more possibilities opening up for with this playoff.
Right. Well, because you're going to have a team. At some point, some team's going to be like the 6th seed and win the playoff, and they're going to have lost 2 or 3 games, right? Like, the way we look at the regular season, that doesn't apply for this year, but starting next year, the way we look at the regular season in college football has to change. Like, an October loss might not end, you lose in October to Kentucky, and it might not end your season now.
The at-large thing and teams coming down the stretch thinking – I think every team wants to win every game, obviously,
sure.
But if there's a favorable matchup, I wouldn't be surprised if a team says, sure, we're 6th, 7th, or whatever, but we get to host or we get to play a little easier opponent, and we don't get the home game or whatever. That's cool. But I mean, we don't get to the bye, but we get to a home game and play whoever. I can't wait until that starts becoming a conversation as well.
Yeah, well, and like the only argument against a bigger playoff has always been, well, it makes the regular season less important. No, it makes the regular season more important because there's so many games that, wouldn't matter this year that might matter in 2 years from now.
Right.
So, all right. So let's get to some actual Mizzou stuff. We'll start team talk, and then we're going to get into some recruiting and some things that have happened. But Case wants to know: does anybody have any idea who will start at quarterback? I mean, I don't feel like I do. Maybe Eli Drinkwitz does. I'm not even positive he does, but I mean, I don't think we've seen anything that would change our minds on this in the last 4 months. But it's obviously the big question about this team. Where do you sit on it? At 4:15 on June 20th.
It's Brady Cook. Brady Cook is he's in line. He's the front runner.
This is where we're going to get to do the Skip and Shannon bit because I don't agree with you.
Oh, you don't think it's Brady right now?
Well, I mean, right now, as we sit here today, yes.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought you was asking.
Sure.
I don't. As far as later,
no. As far as game 1 of the 2023 season, who do you think's under center for Missouri? I mean, I'll go first. I think it's Sam Horn, and I think it needs to be Sam Horn.
It needs to be. Yeah, I think. Yeah, you need to say it needs to be Sam Horn. Will it be Sam Horn? I don't know. I don't know. But here's the thing. With Brady obviously missing all the spring ball and then Sam getting hurt. Did he get hurt maybe a couple days before it started or the first week or something?
It was late February, early March.
Yeah, he really didn't do anything much besides have the jersey on, but he wasn't doing anything, so we couldn't really see or test anything. And we had Jake Garcia out there, but I mean, he was there a couple months. He's still learning the playbook, learning the teammates. I don't know. So when we get into fall camp, we'll really see. But as of now, it's Brady Cook. I don't know. I may change my answer definitely in a month from now when we have SEC Media Days.
Right. And when I say it needs to be Sam Horn, let me clarify that. That is not Brady Cook sucks and this team can't win games with Brady Cook. I thought Brady Cook took way too much heat last year. He wasn't great, but he got better as the year goes on. If Brady Cook comes back in fall camp and he's a significantly better player than he was last year, and Eli Drinkwitz thinks he can go win 8 or 9 games with Brady Cook at quarterback, amen. Great. It's just that what Brady Cook is now entering his 4th year in college. I am assuming that what I have seen out of him is close to what his ceiling is. Now, maybe that's wrong, but most players by their 4th year in college have already probably kind of become what they're going to be. And so I'm assuming that if Brady Cook is the starter, you see in the range of what you had last year. And in the range of what you had last year, I don't think is what the hope is. So I'm saying I'm doing I haven't seen Sam Horn fail yet, so I assume Sam Horn has a higher ceiling. I think Sam Horn would raise the ceiling of this team if that ceiling is there where we think it is. But look, if Cook's the better player in fall camp, then I'm not saying you start Sam Horn just because he's higher ranked and that'll excite people. I mean, the best player is going to win the job. And if that's Brady Cook, so be it. I'm not rooting against the kid or anything. I just think best case scenario for Missouri is that Sam Horn becomes this year what people thought he was coming out of high school.
That off of the fact that they recruited him, he's the higher star guy. Yeah, that, and like you said, athletically and all that stuff, he probably has a higher ceiling. However, and I still keep this in the forefront of my mind, it should have been 8-4 team. So that's one thing. When you think of the fluky losses, should have been an 8-4 team with him having that messed up shoulder that we thought we saw at Kansas State, but they didn't say anything during the season.
But look, if they're going to tell us all offseason he could play with it and it didn't bother him, that's an invalid excuse to me. If it was because of the shoulder, then he shouldn't have played.
I understand that. I'm just saying we don't know 100%, what it is. And I'm still saying, even with that shoulder, those 2 losses, I'm thinking, were those directly him? That first half, that Kentucky game, he was bad. But second half, he made the plays to give them the lead back at one point in the second.
What was the final score of that Kentucky game? I want to say it was 21-17.
21-17.
Okay. Final score of the Auburn game, 17-14 in overtime.
I get.
How you're not in those positions? Score a representative number of points.
No, you're definitely right. But I'm also saying sometimes it's just not your day, and he put them in positions to win, and then random things happen that do not happen every single season. These are specific games that people who watch those games and Missouri fans are going to remember specifically because those don't happen all the time, and they don't happen in the same season like that. So I think he has that, and he's got a good grasp on the playbook, all that good stuff about being a quarterback and leadership. He's team captain, all that stuff. He's got that works for him. But Sam Horn, he's definitely the guy we feel, or at least I feel they want to be like, hope it's this guy because of what he brings.
I think everybody would love Sam Horn to come out in fall camp and just make it obvious, right? Just take the job. I mean, sure, they'd be fine if Brady Cook was suddenly, twice the quarterback he was last year too. My only point is, and look, I'm not saying that he should be this guy, but like Chase Daniel didn't lose games 17-14. He lost games, but he didn't lose them 17-14. I mean, those games, they still lost because of the offense. And the only thing you can really do to spice up the offense a lot is have a different quarterback.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And the arguments you make, valid, because I can see myself next week even being on the 15th, but trying to play devil's advocate for Brady Cook, I still look at like he started the season bad, but it seems like really after that Vanderbilt,
got better.
Yeah, especially that even with the Tennessee game, where they got mauled, and that was a lot more on the defense than the offense. That's where he started to play his best football the last 3 games of the season to help them get into to get a bowl game.
So this just kind of popped into my head. We'll kind of finish up the quarterback talk with this. And I want to know what you think. I think ultimately the decision could come down to how gutsy and how daring is Eli Drinkwitz. And here's why I want to say it, because like he came in and he's 36 years old and he's supposed to be this big offensive guy. And I think we all thought, hey man, this is a dude that takes some chances, and he ran some funky trick plays in the COVID season and all that. And it was pretty fun to watch. In the last 2 seasons, Eli Drinkwitz has been maybe the most conservative coach in America. He's punting on 4th and 1. He's playing guys that like the ceiling seems lower. So my point is, if he is willing to roll the dice a little bit and say, Sam Horn, hey, you're going to make some mistakes. You're a first-year starter, but the ceiling I feel like is higher. I understand the floor might be lower, and there's going to be a couple days where it might look bad, but I like that ceiling. Then I think that improves Sam Horn's chances. But coaches get super conservative, man. They like the quarterback that maybe he can only get you 250 yards and 21 points, but he doesn't give the ball away, as opposed to the guy that might put up 31, but he might give the other team 10, So Brady Cook in the second half of the season last year really was a guy that didn't turn the ball over much, and that offense became very conservative. So I think that choice could come down to Eli Drinkwitz's mentality. And if it does, the last 2 years tell me it's Brady Cook then, because the last 2 years tell me he's not a very aggressive football coach.
It's the old, should I make one bet or should I do my super parlay with
right.
plus, 10,000 odds?
Right. Can I sit at the craps table and just play the pass line all night, or am I throwing out the money on the hard 8 when I get there and have a drink or two in me?
I don't even have much to say, because that is exactly what it is. I mean, it's easy. It's probably easier the further we're out from the season starting, saying one way or the other. But I feel like when it's we're in fall camp and he still maybe hasn't had a decision like he had, so quickly last year. I think it was 7 or 8 days before Cook was named the starter. I don't know. I feel like he could get tight and be like, I just need to know. I know what I have, versus throwing it out there all on the line.
Right. I mean, it's why he played Cody Schrader as much as he knew what he was getting out of Cody Schrader. It wasn't going to be a home run, but he knew Cody Schrader was going to give him a single up the middle, every now and then a double in the gap. And a lot of coaches do that. So if I ask you, give me a number, how many different players, assuming injury is not a factor, how many players start a game at quarterback for Missouri this year?
Starter game. My first inclination is to say 2, but here's my thing. Wouldn't one of them transfer if...
Look, they're losing a quarterback after this year. I mean, they just are. I don't think there's any I think you have to assume every year you're going to have a quarterback transfer.
I wish I knew how, because we haven't talked about Jay Garcia this whole time. Right. I wish I knew how much, like where he was, how close he was in this pecking order. No matter who's 1 and 2, is it 1, 2, and then 3 down here? Is it 1, 2, and he was a regular 3 right under them? Because I could still say 2, knowing he could do that. But I'm gonna stick with 1. I'm gonna stick with 1 for right now.
I say 2 because I think there's a pretty decent chance Drinkwitz goes into game 1 not 100% sure who his starting quarterback is.
That's dangerous.
Like I think he's going to name a guy. I think he's going to start a guy, but I think he's going to know if this doesn't go well, I'm going to give the other guy a shot. So I think even if everybody's healthy, I think at least 2 guys start a game at quarterback. I don't think it's probably 3 because I just think naturally, I don't think you're going to have 3 guys that are close enough. Like the third guy probably is going to be a little bit behind, whoever that is, whether it's Cook, Garcia, or Horn. But I go
question for you. If because I've got the schedule for this year pulled up. So South Dakota, Middle Tennessee. I mean, to start the season, do you think it could be any situation where one guy starts game 1, one guy could possibly start game 2, or they both play both of those games, and you see from there?
I think it's possible. Like, I don't know if he'll say that out loud, but I think it is possible that he goes into those games saying, I know I'm going to play my top 2 guys, and this is an audition to see who starts against Kansas State on September 16th. Which is
entertaining. It's entertaining.
I would say risky. So this kind of Danny's question kind of leads into what I want to talk about next. Say the defense is legit. QB position shows up. Is 9 wins in a playoff realistic? I mean, 9 wins to me is the absolute ceiling for this team of reality, and it might be stretching reality a little bit, but like I could see 9. Like I don't think Tennessee is this program that you just go and say, well, we can never beat them now. I don't think Florida is that. So let's say 9 is the ceiling. But more than that, we talk so much about quarterback. And I kind of posed this question yesterday because PFF's had a few things out like, hey, the highest ranked returning, blah, blah. What's Missouri's best position?
To me, it's between defensive tackle, linebacker, safety.
I think it's linebacker.
Okay. And it depends what your reasoning is for all of them. So like defensive tackle, maybe at the top end as far as the starters, good starters, but they're not best player. You're not saying that person's the best player on the team, but their depth 1 through 5, it's really solid. And then I haven't even talked about Marquise Gracial and Jalen Marshall, who they like a lot. Mm-hmm. And they fit this new mold of what Drinkwitz wants from his interior defensive lineman. He wants bigger guys. Both of those guys, because I was doing my upside downside thing today for defensive tackle, so perfect timing. Both of those guys are 6'4", taller, over 310 pounds. They have the size to play today, and they've got that red shirt under their belts. So they can do that, and they may be able to find a way to really get in that rotation. Linebacker, there was times last year where we were like, Tyron Hopper is the best player on the team. Mm-hmm. And all SEC type of guy. Like he could have got second team probably and wouldn't have shocked no one. I mean, I thought he was probably going to get that, to be honest, that he had a chance for it. And then when you go to safeties, I'm really excited about Dalen Carnell. Jalen Carlisle is, he's been, it seems like since I've gotten here or since the year before that, his name in the NFL have always been attached about what he could be, his potential in the draft. Joseph Charleston proved to be just a reliable veteran that, that worked. So they've got that, and they got added Trevez Johnson and Sidney Williams, for depth, whether that be playing the star in the back end. Mm-hmm. So it depends what exactly you're grading, the best position on.
I go linebacker because you're talking about defensive tackle, and you have to have 5 guys at defensive tackle because you're going to rotate there. if you have two linebackers and they stay healthy, they're going to play every single snap that matters. Like those guys don't come off the field. I mean, Tyron Hopper's going to be out there for every snap that matters for Missouri football, unless he just comes and says, I'm exhausted. We just had an 18-play drive. I need a break. Chad Bailey's going to be out there for almost every snap that matters. I think Hopper's the best football player on the team right now. Now, I know people are going to say, what about Luther Burden? Look, Tyron Hopper was a better player than Luther Burden last year, and that's Luther's only year in college. Maybe Luther is a better player in a year, but right now, Tyron Hopper, I think, has had a better season than any player in a Missouri uniform has had in the SEC. And I think Chad Bailey, if you look at the second half of 2021 and all of last year, like that defense got a lot better when he got on the field. And then you get into, they love Tristan Newsom, who's coming in from junior college. And do we count Dalen Carnell and Trevez Johnson as linebackers because realistically that's kind of what they play, or do those guys count as safeties?
I'm
whatever.
Still counting them.
They're more safeties.
They're more so safeties, but also they got Chuck Hicks coming back, and they like Chuck Hicks as well. But and Tristan Newsom, he seems like he's already the best coverage linebacker on the team. Now that's obviously spring ball, and that's not. We got to see what fall camp and
I'll tell you, there are people talking about Tristan Newsom the way they were talking about Tyron Hopper last year. Now that does not necessarily mean that's what he's going to be, but there are people that think that.
All right. So when you say that, as far as how much they're going to play, that makes sense. Defensive tackle just sticks out because for your three deep, if your third stringers can play, I'm not saying for whole games at a time. But if you can rotate first, second, and third stringers, and there's not a significant drop off if you have your third stringers in for a drive or so or something like that, then that's pretty good. Especially with how the defensive ends are.
So I'm going to be the wet blanket here for a minute, and I'm going to piss some people off that are watching or listening to this. So we talked about the offense, and we're looking at this season, and I think rightfully so, going, hey, it's going to come down to, can they get a representative offense? Now, I think everybody's just kind of assuming that Missouri's defense is like really good to borderline elite. What if this defense isn't quite as good as it was last year? What if, because I want to look back. I mean, the Arkansas game, like Arkansas put up some points and yards. Wake Forest, I know they only put up 27 points, but Wake Forest kind of had its way. Tennessee hung 66 on Missouri. I know some of that had to do with bad offense, but my point is late in the year, there were some hang on. What if maybe we're seeing a little wear? And the other thing that scares me is I just don't know who replaces Isaiah McGuire and DJ Coleman. And so without those guys, does Blake Baker have to blitz a little bit more? If Blake Baker has to blitz a little bit more, are KAD and Ennis Rakestraw and Jalen Carlise and Joseph Charleston a half step or a step worse than they were last year? I'm not saying I don't think the defense is good. I'm just saying that I think we're going through this summer and people are just automatically assuming, hey, this is like a top 10, 15 unit in college football. And things change year to year, and they've got to go prove it again.
So last year, I think there was 30. I think it was 34th in the FBS in total defense. So they were pretty good.
They were especially good considering they were playing with an offense that frequently would just run three plays and put them right back on the field.
That is also true. They're pretty good, but losing Coleman and McGuire, like when you lose best player on the team, second best pass rusher. Even Trajan Jeffcoat struggled last year, but he started.
But he's gone
9
too.
games, and he's playing for Arkansas. So you got 3 of those guys at defensive end at one position. It's a bare defensive end group, and it's inexperienced, and you don't know what you have. Doesn't mean they can't be good, and there can be somebody who surprises everybody. But now you need 2 of them. You're hoping for a third to kind of supplement that, and it's just a lot of inexperienced guys. And setting the edge, like in the SEC is a lot more important than maybe in the Big 12 or something, because they like to run the ball. It gets physical. And of course they need to rush the passer, but that's a forgotten thing about edge. You just think sacks and pass rushing and stuff, setting that edge and not letting somebody like Rocket Sanders or all these running backs in this league go wild is pretty big. So I don't know. I think it will be a good defense. I don't know if it can be as good as last year when you lose what you lose at defensive end.
Right. And there's a lot of guys. I mean, they have thrown numbers at that. You know, Joe Moore's there, Austin Firestone. They got some freshmen, Niles Gaddy, the kid from Jackson State. Like, they're putting a bunch of dudes out there, and they're still kind of looking at defensive linemen in the portal, it looks like, based on some recent offers. So, you know, you assume that they'll find some guys that can play. But I'm just saying, I think the offense has to be significantly better, just because I just don't think you can go ask that defense to not lose anything from last year. You know, we just kind of automatically assume every player is going to get better every year. And again, the smartest thing Eli Drinkwitz says, and he says it like 10 times every week, is progress isn't linear, right? I mean, like, yeah, just because player A had a good year last year doesn't, like, if he was at this level, that doesn't mean he's going to this level this year necessarily. Like, some guys get better, some guys stay the same, and some guys get worse. So not a ton of news, but we just kind of want to catch up and give some thoughts football wise. Let's hit the only news that happens in June. Mostly, at least you should hope the only news that happens in June is recruiting, because if there's news that happens team wise, it ain't good. Police are usually involved, and you don't want to hear about that. So recruiting, a couple things have happened. Aiden Glover, a quarterback commit, which I think is. Look, I don't know if Aiden Glover is the next Vince Young or never plays on a college football field, right? I'm not a scout, but I think it's big to get your quarterback commit in this class. Once Daniel Kalen went to Nebraska, like, they needed to get a guy. They went and got a guy, and so, you know, hopefully, honestly, he's not your starter maybe for 3 seasons, but you've got that next guy in line.
All right. I mean, that's all I seen the 10 thoughts thing, and you said it perfectly. Having a quarterback for each year, basically, that you can go to. So he fits that mold, and whether he's Vince Young or Michael Vick or whatever, or he doesn't play, that's unknown. You're really not even hoping for him to play that first year or second year anyway. You're hoping that the guys ahead of him got it on lock and they can do their thing. But yeah, they needed to get that done, and they got someone they like, so that's cool.
Because in the free transfer era, look, I mean, we already said somebody's leaving after this year. If Brady Cook's not starting this year, look, guys, I know he loves Missouri, but he's got another year. Chances are he ain't going to sit here and be a backup for that other year. If Sam Horn's not starting this year, and I've written this on the site, like, he's got a potential Major League Baseball career down the road. He didn't come here to sit and be a backup. If Jake Garcia's not starting next year, people will say, well, he's already transferred once. He can't go anywhere. Look, Missouri just got a women's college basketball player last night who is at her 5th school in 5 years. There ain't no rules. You can go do anything you want. If he wants to transfer, Jake Garcia could transfer tomorrow and they'd find a reason that it would be okay. Like, I am convinced there are no rules anymore. So I'm not convinced Jake Garcia is locked into being here at all. But I mean, ideal world, hey, Sam Horn's your starter for 2 years, then he goes to the NFL, then Jabari Johnson takes over, then Aiden Glover takes over, and you're off and running with the program, but we don't know. Some news was out today. It has since kind of been pulled down, but it seems like Missouri's going to have somewhere around 15 official visitors in town this weekend. That is going to include Ryan Wingo. It is Missouri's biggest recruiting weekend. It was going to include Williams Nwaneri, who is a defensive end from Liberty North. He is the number 3 player in the country, the number 1 player in the state. He was on that list. It now kind of seems like he is going to take an unofficial visit to Georgia rather than an official visit to Missouri. That kind of tells you, if that happens, that Missouri's not getting this kid because he's got to pay his own way. He's already been to Georgia. You know, I'm not sure Missouri's getting him anyway. But, you know, we were talking, Jarod. I mean, look, right now, we're looking at, if they don't get Ryan Wingo, they may not get anybody in the Rivals top 10 in the state of Missouri. That has never happened since we've been doing rankings. Like, how how big a concern is this? Because there is the crowd that is panicking, and then there's the crowd that say, well, recruiting doesn't even matter anymore, just sign transfers.
I mean, not in the top 10 since Riley's been doing this, huh?
Right. Like it's and the landscape is different. The portal's never existed like this before. So it is different, but you still got to sign some guys.
You've got to you're right. The transfer portal means a lot and stuff and all that good stuff. But a lot of these teams that go 9-3 and 10-2 and in the playoff and win championships, they got a lot of kids that 4 or 5-star kids, right? Not saying Missouri is going to be expecting to get that, but to not get any of the top 10 in your own state, because if you're not going to get them from your home state, where are you going to get them?
That's the thing. If you're Missouri, if Ryan Wingo and Williams Nwaneri are from Arizona or Pennsylvania or Florida, they ain't coming here. You're just not getting, like, I'm sorry to say that, guys, but it's just true. If you look at it, that guy is going to Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, USC. Like, that's where those kids go. So the only shot you have to get those guys is them being from Missouri, which is why it makes it kind of important. And I just, like, I don't believe that a college football program that is going to play between 40 and 50 guys in almost every game, I don't believe you can survive simply by saying all we need to do is recruit the portal. Like, high school recruiting might matter a little bit less than it did 10 years ago, but it's like you still got to sign guys. You still got to have guys that you sign as freshmen who are on your team as juniors and play well.
That, and we were talking about it earlier, I think, with Brady Cook and stuff. When you're getting players who are in their 3rd or 4th year, their ceiling, you're right around that. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people who hop in the portal, it's because they probably weren't that great or it wasn't the right situation for the team they were at. So unless you're one of the blue bloods getting, top, Denver Harris's and stuff, who immediately he'd start on probably, most teams in the country or something like that, you're getting the people who it wasn't a great fit for where they're at. Now they're trying to see what they can do at your school. And you kind of already understand their ceiling. There's something too, like what you said about Sam Horn, kind of saying, I don't know, this is a 3-4 star guy that I really like. And we don't know. He has the benefit of we don't know what he can be, but we have this idea of what he can be. So let's go with that. If it's all full of veterans and stuff, I mean, 1, quick roster turnover, and 2, you're kind of capping what you can do, what your team could do.
And also transfers, you're either taking guys who are coming up from a lower level and counting on them being good, or you're taking guys who largely weren't playing at a higher, like, a kid is not going to transfer from Florida to Missouri very often if he was seeing the field a ton, or Georgia to Missouri if he was playing a lot. So this kind of predates you, Jarod, obviously, but Eli Drinkwitz's first couple classes, he came in, made a big splash. I think 19th in the country and then 12th in the country with his first 2 recruiting classes. And it kind of reset the bar. And we all said, hey, maybe this idea that Missouri can't recruit at that level is wrong. But one thing I remember distinctly saying at the time is it's awesome that he's done it. And this is the level you have to recruit at every single year if you want to compete to win important things in this league. Like I said, it can't be 1 or 2 years here and then you just slip back to 35 where Missouri has lived in the past. So his first class was 19th. Well, truthfully, that ranking doesn't even matter anymore because 2/3 of that, legitimately, I'm not even exaggerating, 2/3 of that class is gone. The next class was number 12, and that's the one with Burden and Horn that we're waiting to see if that class is what that class is. But then the 2023 class, they were 33rd in the country. I am including Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC now because for all intents and purposes, they are SEC teams. So at number 33 in the country, do you want to guess where Missouri's recruiting class ranked in a 16-team SEC?
I'll say 12.
15th. It was better than Vanderbilt. Every other team in this league had a top 32 class. So I think you can survive that for 1 year, right? Hey, that's okay. We understand you're Missouri. You're not going to recruit on the level of maybe some of these other teams. like an Oklahoma or Georgia, whatever. But you can survive one class that's at number 33, especially if you're hitting transfers. But if you get into another class that's there, then it goes back to what I was saying 2 years ago. No, the 12th and 19th, that has to start to be the rule, not the exception. If you're going back to having classes in the mid-30s and you're 14th and 15th in this league every year, I'm sorry, guys, the ability to just take players that everybody says aren't quite as good as the other teams in this league and beat those teams, it's just not realistic. Like, people want to say, well, that's what Gary Pinkel did. Well, no, it really isn't. He was probably ranking 5th or 6th in the Big 12 in recruiting rankings and finishing 2nd and 3rd. So he was beating some of those teams, but it's not like he was 11th in that league. And that's where the SEC is so different. That's why, I was at the NFL draft, and, every year the SEC is like, we've had 972 players drafted and the rest of college football's only had 971, right? It's every year. And so being 33rd overall, it would be 4th in the Big 12. That's great. That's good enough. It's not good enough if it's 15th in your own league. And so that's where the concern starts to come in for me with where this class is right now, with only 3 total commitments and is because last year was a slight step back. If this one is a step back from that, then you start to look at and say, is there enough talent on this roster to win enough games in the next couple seasons?
Right. And I want to add one more thing to that. I talked to Jeremiah McClellan a couple weeks ago at the camp, and he said to me that he'd come to it for a visit, during the season. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem with things like that. And especially when you're not one of those teams winning 9, 10, 11 games constantly in the New Year's Six, into the playoff coming to 2024.
Right. The top 12 recruiting teams in the country are almost the same every year. So, yeah.
Right. Here's what happens when you're waiting on the season to come and you're not winning games. If I was a recruit and you're the hometown team and all that stuff, but I got the Blue Bloods recruiting me, and you know what they're going to do every year, and they're saying, we've got this, we got that, NIL, all that good stuff. But you're the hometown team. I've got to wait for you, and we don't know exactly what you're going to be. You've been 6-6 for a long time. I've now got to wait until the fall to see if you start winning to kind of help your case. By that time, all the Blue Bloods have already told you everything you want to hear. This is where you're going to be. You're going to have all this stuff, associated with Ohio State, Alabama, whatever it is, while you're waiting for, the local team to do good or not.
McClellan's got 4 official visits this month. I forget, it's LSU, Ohio State, and a couple others. I can't remember who the other 2 are off the top of my head, but that's why I put in one of the threads today. I said I'd be surprised if Jeremiah McClellan makes it to the season not committed, if we're being honest. He said he'll take a visit this fall, and he may take a visit this fall, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him commit somewhere.
And if he commits to somewhere else, it'd be really hard to commit to one of those schools with all the resources.
It happens, but
no, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it's going to be hard to go to those official visits elsewhere, commit, then come to Missouri and say again, it happened with Luther. When he flipped on Oklahoma, but that doesn't happen all the time though.
Right. I always say, yes, you're going to get a kid to flip sometimes, but you'd always rather be the first one to get him and try to hold on to him than be trying to steal him from somewhere else. So, look, I'm not saying panic, guys, but it goes back to what we started this show with. This is a pretty big 6 months for Missouri, not just on the football field, but also on the recruiting trail. College football is changing. This league is getting so much harder than any league in the history of college football, I think, has ever really been. There's a lot of questions out there over the next 6 months. And I don't know about you, man. I'm kind of getting the batteries recharged and getting ready to get some of these answers, right? As opposed to just asking the same questions every day. I'm ready to start finding out what some of the answers are.
Yeah, I'm ready for SEC Media Days. It's about, like you said, it's about a month away. So ready to see what what they've got to say. I want to know some more updates because spring ball was it just felt so weird not having that.
It was like
game.
It almost didn't happen.
Yeah, it just, for one, it feels like that was January. It was 3 months ago, but it just felt like an eternity ago. And then the scrimmage thing was weird. I just feel like there were so many things we didn't get to have even concrete ideas on, and then add in injuries like quarterback and stuff. A lot of stuff going on.
And then add in the fact that for the first time in a while, Missouri fans and my attention was on basketball at that time of year, which it hasn't been for a while, right? So, all right. So we're going to finish up with one question here from your boy Drew. He wants to know who the Lakers should draft on Thursday. Just say Kobe Brown, man. You'll be the most popular guy here.
Yes. Anybody who's going to help them put up buckets and play some defense, trade it, draft someone. I don't care, but do something more than what you do.
There you go. Well, guys, I appreciate everybody who did jump on live with us here on YouTube. Make sure before you leave to subscribe to the channel, like the show. Again, we'll have at least one more episode before SEC Media Days. Then after SEC Media Days, we'll do this again. And starting in August with fall camp, we're going to be doing, Jarod and I will do this every single week and all that. We'll add Drew into the mix to talk some basketball as that gets closer. It has been a long off season. We're most of the way through it, not quite all the way through it, but appreciate you guys joining us here live. If you're listening on the podcast, say good things, share it on social media, all that. That'll be up as soon as I hit end here. And no specific schedule, but we will talk to you next time.